everyone, and welcome to the Launch Gravy podcast. I'm your host, Larry Weber, and on today's show, I'm going to be speaking with Lucy Wang, a technical marketing guru. From application development at Walt Disney to group marketing leader at Microsoft to databases at Amazon Web Services, all the way through to leading marketing at a slew of startups in the AI and cybersecurity spaces. She now sits as a senior director of marketing at Relational AI. Lucy, welcome to the Launch Gravy podcast.
Thank you, Larry. Good to be here.
So like you are a senior director for marketing at Relational AI. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role, your responsibility, and then, dig into like a brief overview on Relational AI, what they do?
Right. So at Relational AI, my current role there is really to oversee comprehensive go-to-market and content strategy. So that is a broad range. So that because it's a startup, I have to cover things like content marketing and product, developer marketing and digital, social, even PR, and a little bit of events.
Wow, like everything underneath the sun, it sounds like.
Yeah, right. And startup life.
Yeah, so cool. How about let's dig it into, we'll get back into some of the marketing aspects and some of the things and how this affects startup marketing and launches and all that jazz. But a little bit more on Relational AI. What does Relational AI do?
It's extremely technical company, but I'm trying to put in the layman's English because not everybody is super familiar with knowledge graph. So I would say that it's a relational knowledge graph co-processor for any data cloud. So we're going to start with Snowflake and eventually plan expand to Azure. So think us as building a knowledge graph or maybe say it's a semantic layer on top of relational data. So because of that, and it allows you to build advanced AI workloads such as graph analytics, rule-based reasoning, predictive and prescriptive analytics. Those are super important for, it's called a compound AI. So think about, we know this microservices. So view those like different workloads as micro AI workload to build your bigger projects. So that's what we do.
Got it. And what would be, if you could add to that, because a lot of people probably aren't super familiar with this. So from maybe dumb it down a little bit, but like what would be some of the key use cases or maybe some of your customer use cases on how they're leveraging Relational AI?
Right. So I would say like so think about relational, right? Everything is
Hmm.
relation. And a particular when things gets really complicated, a tabular format is difficult to grow, right? So a few typical cases like fraud detection. So you are
Mm,
or community detection because you can discover through all this relationship, like what we call the circle is like the node, and then the connection is the edge, right? So you can see the connection between different things. So what we say is, I see the unseen, discover the unknown, right? So you connect the unconnected dots together. So I would say like product recommendation, fraud, community detection, and like pathfinding. So things like supply chain optimization, like which one is the best route for you, right? So when I say those, it's like super high level so people can understand it. But deep down, there's a lot of different workloads and algos we have to do to enable that capability.
got it. So correct if I'm wrong, but maybe in simple terms is like you're up leveling the relational game to handle like full on graph, the ability to handle relationships between data as well, right? And mass scale.
Right. You actually brought up a great point, which is a relational, because it's different from a tabular database. But
Mhm.
our stuff is it's more relational friendly. So we can work with Snowflake's relational table. We take care of a lot of, how do I say, heavy lifting of you. So it's very enterprise friendly because a relational paradigm. So that's how we are slightly different from Neo4j, which is another graph provider or vendor in the market.
Yeah, I know them. So all right, let's turn quickly away from some of the technology and dig in a little bit of
Right.
kind of what I want to talk to you about today really is because of your background in technical marketing and you've seen, man, you've come from some of the large behemoth organizations, all right, like Microsoft, Amazon, and others, and now you've been spending some time in smaller upstarts. And I'd like to focus a lot of our discussion today on how do you handle startup marketing? How do you handle like you mentioned before, like what you do in your day to day. And oh my gosh, in some companies, that's like multiple departments, but you're figuring out how to do it yourself. Maybe can you talk us through a little bit, like in more detail, like what does startup marketing mean to you, and dig in a little bit on that?
Well, where do I start? Multiple facets for sure. Never a dull moment for sure. Um, I would say the first thing I realize is very different from your typical big corporate hyperscaler that we both worked at before, right?
Mm,
Is that maybe you need to throw an MBA marketing textbook out of the window from the get go. It doesn't mean you need to throw away all your marketing disciplines like positioning and messaging, all that goodies, right? You still need that,
right.
like benefit first and then support by data points and capability. All that is great. What I'm saying here is really any fluffy marketing linguas, right? They at times just don't stick with either your stakeholders or your target audiences.
Are you
Partic-
equating fluffy and MBA right now? That's not
a
necessarily
little
a good
bit.
thing or something I agree with, but I see where you're going with this. You're like, let's stay true to the product, stay true to what matters, and let's get away from buzzword bingo kind of stuff.
Yeah, like stay away from buzzword jargon and all the things that you don't think will relate to your target audience. And people don't have a lot of patience for fluff these days. They just want to go straight to the point and show me what you do, show me why I should care, and give me some examples. And let's go to work. They don't
Yeah.
want all those like big picture, everybody sounds the same, right? At the end of the day, you don't even know, wait, do you do cloud? Do you do data? Do you do security? Because on the surface, everybody sounds the same, right? So everybody copy each other's messaging. So you just have to get to the point, right? So that's the first thing I realized, and particularly with the PLG company, which stands for
Mm,
product-led growth company.
yeah.
Typically, these companies are founded by engineers, so they may or may not understand marketing, but they do need marketing, right? So we have to meet in the middle. How can we use the proper marketing to help smaller companies grow, right? So that's a big thing.
Yeah. So if you're talking PLG too, then you really need to focus hardcore on your customer. And I would assume that would be for just being a small organization or you're being a startup marketing. It's start with the customer, work backwards, right? And all that. But really you need to know it because that if you're a PLG motion, then that's kind of part of your sales force too, and your demand gen and your usage and your feedback. And so maybe can you tell us a little bit more specifically how the customer plays in to your role in marketing?
For customers right now, we just came out from the data summit from Snowflake. We have quite a bit of prospects.
Mm,
So the thing about customer, you have to understand the typical thing, pinpoint, right?
hmm
And how do you influence them? What kind of competitor offerings they are considering, right? And also, where do they go? This is what I call the watering holes, to get educated, to get convinced that you are the best solution for them at this particular moment for them. So that's very important to understand. And also, I think some marketers at times, my peer will forget one thing is what's their motivators? Why
hmm
do they want to learn this? So can be say, oh, I can solve problem with your solution. But sometimes, for example, for developers or engineers, they want to be viewed as the hero or expert in their area. So how do you make that happen? Right? Like this is like getting to the influencer marketing just a little bit, right? Like how do you make them feel good? So this is beyond just your technology, your company, my company, a business benefit. It's
hmm
also what's the personal benefit for me as well. So that's
Yeah.
like over the years I've learned.
So yeah, and one thing you brought up, I want to focus on a little bit, were the watering holes. And so folks listening, hey, they might not have done this before, or they're getting into this area of marketing, and they really want to get closer to the customers, and you're in an emerging space. And so a question I would throw out to you would be, how do you find out what watering holes to go after? And I know because you've been at a number of different companies and all have different, like, hey, cyber is different than AI and builders and data. But how do you think through finding these watering holes? Because not everyone knows where they are.
Well, if you're marketing a marketer in the technical space for long enough, I think you better know where the watering holes for different folks. Otherwise, I don't know who you can marketing to, right? Because marketing is about channel and content. That the combination help you target the right audience at the right time. I would say it depends on your audience because it's a startup. So I'm going to pivot my talking points maybe a little bit towards a developer audience, right? So for that, one of the misconcepts I realize people think is that, oh, they just want webinars. It's all good. They just want
Yeah.
tutorials. Yes, that's like a table stake. But as we found out more is that they also go to analysts' website or like review websites quite a bit to figure out who use what and why they use this one, the pros and cons. So you need to have a presence in all these little places as those are not the typical channels people will think about, like the review sites, the AI reports I garner. You'll be surprised because their thinking is that I want to learn the technology that is a leader in that space. And who give me the recommendation? Either the analysts or people who have already used this technology and they
Mhm.
have real feedback for me, right? So that's one set of channels I think that are very important to finding developers. The other one is really those places they frequently hang out, like Reddit, Medium, uh, their community site, like Python website, like the Python communities, the SQL communities for our audience. You got to target these people
Right.
because these days we expose a lot of things from through Python. Python can be used for so many different things, from website to data science and all that. So for what our perspective at relational AI, Python is literally the gateway to our system, our platform. So we got to figure out where these guys are. We have to enable developers in a more aggressive way.
Yeah, and so I need to bring up that's a very important point where you think about communities, right? Anyone can say Reddit, anyone can say, Stack Overflow, even for that matter, or something. But the fact is, look, you're doubling down on what developers specifically are using for your product, which is Python. And Python's a very vibrant community and one of the most, if not probably leveraged language that's out there right now for development, if not definitely one of the top three. And being able to focus and have those conversations in those environments in an authentic way. One thing you touched on, though, that I don't think many organizations always do out of the gate, specifically younger and more startup oriented, are the analysts. Because many times folks will think, oh, the analysts, they're for large enterprises. Why? Because they're expensive. And to be a part of that, right? Most of the folks that get into like magic quadrants and things of the sort usually have to have a larger, I would say, customer base or amount of revenue or things like they have the different thresholds that they leverage there. But, look, it's still wicked important to start and reach out, have those conversations and get on the radar for the latest and the greatest and the next ones, and even to learn from them. So I think that's important for startups to make sure that they're leveraging their analyst communities as well, because even if it's not just to brief them and get an understanding, once they know you're there, then they might recommend you. They might have those conversations, and then it becomes a two-way street. So I think that's a smart area to push on.
Yeah, precisely. Yes, because a really good analyst is really viral marketing for you, right? If you get onto their radar and you can get onto their recommendation list, it is golden, right? So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
How this is your opinion on this? Because going from, let's say you have someone coming from large enterprise XYZ, and they're going to a startup or thinking about it. You rattled off a lot of stuff that you've got to handle and you've got to go maintain. How do you handle being nimble and adaptable, right? Because I'm assuming you have some changing priorities from the organization. And one day you've got the ARPR hat on, and then the next day you're a demand gen kind of person. So walk us through a little bit of maybe your day to day and the things that you're working on. And number two is, how do you handle that? How do you change on a dime, so to speak?
Yeah, so you mentioned the word nimble, adaptive. I think that's the key. You have to think about a lot more than just a big, giganormous corporations, because you got to think about your burn rate. Like you can control that, right? But also that will have impact on your budget. And the second part is competitors. So every
Hmm.
6 months there will be a new vendor in this route. Like knowledge graph is not a very crowded space, and even these days we get to see more people entering the space because the close relationship between graph and AI, right? Like
Hmm.
for example, graph and large language model, it's a thing down the road, right? It's a thing right now. It's also a thing down the road because it's deep learning. And then you also have funding issue. And within the company, you also have resource allocation issue. So you just have to be like constantly adjust yourself and also your priority based on the business priority. So I would say prioritization based on a few things that the urgency, the importance of business, and what you can get done within, say, 12 hours in a day, right? So I think that is just to teach you, like, what is super important at this moment, right? While you can plan out for 6 months, sure, for sure, or every quarter, but you also should be able to learn to adjust priority just a little bit based on all the little changing agents happening around you, right? So that's how I get to prepare for that.
Got it. And maybe to extend that discussion a little bit, part of the changing dynamics, you think in a larger organization, right? Your bureaucracy, and you've got lots of managers, lots of people pulling in different ways. At the end of the day, it's the shareholder in many ways. And then you have the mid-sized organizations that have, let's say, people who are funding, who are building, who own different strings there, right? You have different boards. Like how do you, how maybe just your opinion on this is, how do you handle the different stakeholders, and are there different stakeholders that you're dealing with in a more startup environment versus your time at Microsoft or Disney or things like that?
Yeah, the difference also, okay, so in the bigger company, you everybody has a lot more specialized silo you can just hide in, right? Like you get to interact with your immediate neighbors, like the product team, the engineer team, the sales, right? Here, because it's a smaller company, we help each other out. So my stakeholders is just about everybody in the company because we have a very small marketing team. So we have to support sales, product, brand, sometimes even HR, because you got to be on the social media, right? You have to show people who you are, what your HR is like. So we have to figure out how to work with HR to promote our culture, right? And what else? Engineering for sure, and events as well, and little PR. I have to say that you just have to learn fast and adjust fast. So this is what I give my recommendation to my intern is that you have to be just like hit the ground running. These days, I can show you the guardrail and starting point and all that goodies, right? But at the end of the day, you learn everything by talking to people, by doing, by chat GPT. You just have to figure out how to do it, right? Because everybody is busy. You have to be very independent, self-starter, and tenacious in a way, right? So that's how I say you take care of the business. Now, in terms of important stakeholders, I would say still product engineering, and sales. These are still my top three priorities, regardless, right? Because one build a product, one sell the product.
Mhm.
So, and you couldn't be more important, right? To help facilitate the communication between this little thing that I call triangle, golden triangle, or trinity, what have you. Yeah.
How, okay, so you bring up a thought now around your prior experiences at larger enterprises. And so maybe a question, because you're starting to touch on it, but what would be, in your own words, the biggest difference on how you bring products to market in the large ones you have in the past versus in a startup environment? Because it's, a lot of themes that are coming out from you is all hands on deck, roll up the sleeves, get it done, over communicate. And there's elements of that in larger enterprise, over communication definitely being one of them. But there's got to be a little bit of something different. Maybe it's good enough is good enough, or speed, or tell us a little bit more about how bringing products to market is a little different, or it is, or it maybe isn't different than large enterprises.
There's some difference. So for big companies like AWS, that's just like a theatrical show, right? You like the every year it reinvent. Everybody practice, and get all the channels ready to go. It's super. How do I say it? It's orchestrated across different
Yeah,
channels. You have
great word.
a person's like a program manager, their only job is to make sure the thing goes live, right? So they can coordinate everything from PR, marketing, sales, business, everybody to make sure, hey, ready to go, right? They can get down to minutes. I've seen launch plan that go by minutes. Hey, on stage, and then PR, social, blah, blah, like this one turn on, that one turn on, all the way to the T's, right? That is bigger company. For smaller company, at times that we don't have the luxury, right? So we just make sure that engineer and technical writers focus on getting the documents ready. The
Mhm.
engineers make sure the bits are flip on. And the marketing make sure you get all the coverage like PR and all that done. So I would say engineering and product take a bigger lead in this case. And marketing is it's more like air coverage. Make sure that our product announcement is done properly on Snowflake's platform because we're a partner on the in the marketplace. So you have to make sure all the Snowflake audiences understand what you try to sell to them, right? Because literally right now we're sales to Snowflake. It
Mhm.
is our biggest sales channel. So that's a difference, you see. So I will also add that in a smaller company, sometimes I feel like the product marketing and the brand marketing uh, are a little bit, the line between them is a little blurred because your product at this stage of the company is your brand.
Mhm.
And that is totally different with bigger company. Like Azure is not Microsoft. Microsoft also have like a 360 and what have you, right? Many business productivity suite of products.
Mhm.
Azure just like their cloud offering. They have Xbox, what have you. But with a small company, your product is your brand, which is very interesting, right?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, and that is something really to think about. And you only have one product or a handful of products, and that's what you're known for. You really need to make sure then, as you said before, like the product marketing kind of plays that blended. You are the brand, you are that corporate marketing vehicle beast, so to speak, because the corporate is the product and the product is the corporate. One thing that stands out for me a little bit is, and this is from my days dealing with large organization and also having been at smaller ones, the narrative of the product and making sure that when you launch it, it's written down. I know things you mentioned AWS and the orchestration. I knew what that thing was a year beforehand because it's been so well oiled ahead of time versus the startup. I don't know. My experience has been some of the stuff we started with, and we're getting ready to launch it, and you turn around, and you're like, "What? This is not the same thing as it was. No one told us." And that's a level of being nimble that you have to handle really quick. And do you see that as well as being a challenge to stay up with the, I would say, the agile changes that are happening to the product?
Yeah. So I would say that as the product team make iterations to the product, like either from customers' feedback, right now we probably prioritize customers' feedback, which we call VOC, into the product iteration more than what do you want to build, right? But
Mhm.
once you can address the concern, then we have to deliver according to the product roadmap. So yes, we have to be flexible because we don't have a lot of like thousands of customers, right? So the customer, you have to make sure they're happy. And then they go around and spread the word of mouth of good words, putting some good words for you. It's true. And we have to stay nimble. Or maybe we have to make some trade-off, right? In addition to voice of customer, your product roadmap, you also have to make sure your platform or your foundation is stable enough. Those are the work. It's like plumbing. You don't see it, right?
Hmm.
But only the user will experience that, or scalability, performance, security, all that things, right? You have to invest, which might slow you down to say, hey, I want to build this new AI workload, the shiny objects. It's like building a building. You have to spend quite some time building the foundation, make sure it's strong enough to support your fancy features above. So there's always a conscious decision. It's, hey, you got to spend some energy, strengthen and battle test your foundation. And the next one is really, you got to address some customer, the squeaky wheels, right? A chairs. And then you got to think about, oh my God, my competitor is coming up with this new thing. And in order to beat them or be the leader in the marketplace, what do you have to do? So
Yeah.
I feel like a good product leader and the good product marketing leader have to think like that. How do you market those messages to your target audiences? Like, hey, we without being way ahead of your ski, right? You got to give them your messaging has to be aspirational, and it has to be like understanding what your customer or what your competitors are offering, what your customers are asking. Also, the things that you don't hear, which is a foundational thing.
Hmm.
So yes, you're right. Constantly, you have to adjust and listen and iterate. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And another thing that I'm thinking through as you talk through that, and you think about a startup, you think about in a nascent emerging space, you you don't there's not a lot of people have gone before you, and you have a product that may not be realized by the public. And I would say is this is a question for you here on how do you handle entering, and because I view it as a total challenge, and I've been challenged with this, but even looking into new areas of opportunity, how do you market a product that there isn't any real like test against where it's supposed to stand? Or you might have some competitors that are out there, but they have limited engagement, and then you might have new features that could turn the market on its side. So I don't know. Do you have any recommendations on how do you approach it? Perhaps marketing a product that might not really have an established being yet, or there might not be a market for it, and
Mhm.
or there might not be awareness of it yet.
Right. So this is a great question because we try. So what you are saying touch a bigger topic, which is perhaps you are creating a brand new category, which
Correct.
we call category creation. So recently, a couple months ago, we start to use this new concept from a business consulting company called Play Bigger. Have you heard of that company?
Mm,
So they recommend multiple different things to create a category for you. You don't have to be the best in your new category, but you have to do something that the existing category people cannot solve the problem. You are the new
mm,
one. And they have a bunch of things. It's called the lightning strike. It's called a mobilization. So once you have this idea, you have to have some blueprints, and you have to literally mobilizing the whole company towards that vision. And then towards the end, there's always a thing called lightning strike. So what does that mean? You tap into a major event, whatever that may be. It's called your lightning strike,
hmm.
and you announce your product. You talk to the media. You that's why it's called lightning strike, right? And from then on, you constant every 6 months you have another lightning strike. So another event. It may not be as big as your first one, but it has to be on the cadence. Constant find event to strike. So that's what I recommend people do, which I thought is very interesting, right? They're using this concept about strike, like shock and awe, to bring your thing to the right place, to the right audience. Of course, there's many other things that people probably talk about, uh, like tapping to a bigger channel. Like for example, Snowflake is a great channel. People may not know you, but people know this ginormous channel. You can be a partner in their marketplace. The next one, you just go to AWS. It also has a big place, right? So through that, you can do a lot of co-marketing. I'll give you one example. So in June, we partner with Snowflake, so the data summit, right, in June. And this is a really big event. And we're one of their featured customer because they really like our special approach to AI through the
Mhm.
semantic layer, right? Because AI is all about understanding the context between structured and or unstructured data, right? And we create this semantic layer that understand data from different silos. So Snowflake view us as a very important partner to use their platform, right? So you see, what I'm saying is that you yourself have to find different striking events and also the right channel to push your stuff to. Particularly, associate yourself with the well-known and established player in the market.
Yeah. Yeah, and make your differentiations known and that so you stand out on your own, kind of like how you were with Snowflake. How do you stand out? That was one of my questions was going to be actually is
Exactly.
how the heck do you stand out with a company like that, right? Because they have a lot of different partners, and you want to make sure that you're filling a gap that creates a high value for them and their customer base. So they are incented then to want to be around and with you in that process.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
Uh,
Sorry.
Yeah, very correct. I would just add that you also want to find your first partner that your offerings are complementary to each other. Maybe they don't have this particular workload because to
Mhm.
keep their customer happy on their platform, you pretty much need to have everything. But as a platform, you can only be good at maybe out of 10 things, 7 things, right? Then you need someone who is really good at the 3 things that are strategic for them. So in this case, our unique role in AI space is very valuable to Snowflake. So that's how complementary we are. Remember earlier I mentioned the fact that we're relational, and most of the enterprise data is relational. So it's easier
Mhm.
for people to understand. So that's the uniqueness about us.
So you're basically going in there and all that giant load of relational data that exists, tapping into that and making it darn easy to do so, to bring it into the graph world so that you can actually go and play in those fraud detection type environments. Or I always, in the data space, I always thought those were the cool use cases. The stuff that you're making magic happen, like finding, I think what was one of the ones, like finding not just fraud, threats and fraud, but also you can see like the bad communities of folks, whether it be, human trafficking and things like that. Yeah. And so those are some of the use cases that put a wow factor out there.
Mm-hmm.
And while it might not be everyone's use case, it's a very important one. And the more access we have it, you're leveraging AI and data for good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where some people have this whole AI thing. Oh my God, it's scary. It's taking jobs. It's creating more chaos in the cyber world. And it is, but there are situations where that AI can really help the humans, the human race and people and just do good things in this world. So,
Mm-hmm.
having that front and center is important as well. We're getting to time here. I did want to ask you one last question specifically around cadence, because you talked about these lightning strikes and some people rolling thunder or tent poles and do you have a process that you use with relational AI for launches? Is it like, do you do things now around these lightning strikes, or do you also have, hey, every 2 months we put out a collection of things because there's going to be feature updates and smaller things as well for the launch community? So maybe different tierings and things like that. So do you have an approach to launches that you're following, and is it timed? And can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So I
Mhm.
would say so after Summit, the next one is Snowflake's World Data Tour. So we're going to hit different cities in the state and different countries. So just to go with them. So it's after reInvent, there's like a mini things you go to different country. You announce a big thing, and now you need to make
Summits.
sure the summits, right? You exactly you land all the messaging with the local markets. So that's another cadence we tie to. And then from then on, we just do our own announcement here and there, right? But we really, like I said, the company is not big enough. If you just do your own independent announcement, people may or may not pay attention to you. But if you tap into Snowflake's announcement cadence, people
Yep.
will perk up and listen. Oh, okay, sure, yeah, because we're viewed as one of their top partners at this point.
I think it's an important concept, specifically in the startup space, is you're focusing, as you said before, on a couple of different vendors, partners to work with, and leveraging that as your entire community out of the gate. And that's that your tentpole, your lightning strike is really rallied then around the partner or Snowflake in this instance, for at least for now, and your
Uh-huh.
go-to-market model then really rallies, hey, what are you guys doing? Oh, hey, we got some stuff coming out too. We want to be a part of this, to get that
Exactly.
user base engaged. And I think that even gets back to the beginning. We talked about, in startup environment, where are these watering holes? I think a big watering hole right now is for you guys is Snowflake. And
Yeah.
that's really one of those top area communities that you can tag into. And I think that's a good learning too for folks that are thinking about getting into a startup marketing role, is who are those behemoths that are already driving a part of the market that you can work with, basically stick close to, learn from, work with, and help augment their customer base because it already exists today.
Yeah. And also, what do you bring to the table that a big channel will pay attention to, right? So, as you can see, everybody try to dance in front of big players. But what do you bring to the table? What do you know their product gap is? And deliver the product gap and the product messaging to fill that gap. That's how
Hmm.
you stand out and cut through the noise. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah, no. Hey, we got to go here with time, but Lucy, good conversation today. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, look forward to connecting with you again soon. Just real quick, last question for people to get in touch with you. Just LinkedIn would be the best way for people to have
Yes.
any questions.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Lucy, thank you again, and look forward to connecting. We'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.